Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and I know you just saw me wearing this outfit when I did what was now yesterday's video, but this is just a few minutes after I finished that video and I wasn't about to go in the other room and change my clothes to give the illusion that I did this on another day. But I got an idea to do another video and I'll release it tomorrow. But that explains my clothes. I thought I would, when I was putting the Dame Madame Fortune's Wheel deck away, I saw yet another deck that I forgot completely about. And I thought I'd showcase that one next. Now, this one is called the Crystal Tarot by Elisabetta Trevisan. And of all the decks that I've ever owned, it's the only deck that I couldn't stand using it the way it looked. And I'll show it to you in a minute when I reverse the camera. I felt like I can't use this deck unless I make a modification to it. And I've never, ever, ever, before or since, done a modification to any deck. Now, I'm extremely conservative when it comes to my decks, and I figured, well, if I'm going to modify this deck, I'm going to keep the older publication in pristine condition, and I'll buy a new deck, which would not have the same date on it, and that'll be the one I modify. Now, as it turns out, I think it's the same publication date and everything, so I don't think I gained anything by buying a second deck. But boy, am I glad I bought a second deck, because once I modified it, I couldn't figure out what I was looking at. It became very complicated. So I am going to show you what I did, and I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison with the intact original deck so that you can see the difference between how it came and how I modified it. Now, as it turns out, modifying the deck really didn't help me, and it's not a deck I ever used. I did use it in the beginning, but it's not one that I grab. You know, it's not, you know, it kind of just went into the cabinet and I forgot all about it, actually. And I think maybe you'll understand why when I flip the camera and show you why. So the boxes are identical. There's just one slight variation on these decks, but it's minimal. But the little white books for both tell us that it's 2004, I think. The publication date was 2004, I think. And when I bought this deck, I don't know where I originally saw the images. Maybe I just saw the box. You know, it's possible that I just saw the box and thought, oh, that's interesting. Let me check it out and see what it's about. I don't know if I would have bought it if I'd have known how it was configured on the paper. But I can't speak on that at this stage because it was so many years ago. I don't recall. It's 20 years ago now, right? But at any rate, I bought this deck and I was so annoyed or I just didn't like the way it looked, you know, with the gap in the picture. And I didn't quite get it. I didn't quite understand it. I mean, the art is beautiful. And I thought, wow, if it weren't for this unfortunate border, I could really sink my teeth into this deck because look at the image. It's just lovely. So as I said, I preserved the original deck that I had. I bought a second deck that I figured, you know, would be a later printing and I'd just chop it up. And if I ruined it, I wouldn't be sad. Now, as it turns out, I did not ruin it. I did a really good job. I didn't make a single mistake, as a matter of fact. And I even edged the sides. Look at that. It's my only time that I've ever done any such thing. I bought all the right equipment. I bought the little corner cutter, and I bought, you know, a sliding razor blade thing, and I bought everything I needed to do a really good job, and I did a really good job. But by cutting off the edges, let's see what it did to the backs. I mean, yeah, I mean, it cut off a bit of the top. It's not It's not horrible what it did to the backs. Now the problem I have now after having chopped it is now for some of them I can't figure out what cards they are, without the name. And I'm so glad that I bought a second one because, I mean, okay, obviously I could tell that this is the Fool. But for some, it gets a little less obvious. I mean, yeah, okay, I know this is the Magician. But there are a few that I ended up not being able to tell. And, if I use this deck for a client, I don't want to have to constantly refer to the original deck or the book. And the little weight book, doesn't show pictures, so you're kind of on your own. I mean, the images are beautiful. They're really beautiful without all that extra baloney on the edges on the border, right? But I didn't realize it would be as hard for me to discern what card is what. Like, on first glance, this might look like a king, but as it turns out, it's the Emperor. And it's important to be able to distinguish the cards. So unless I sit there every day and familiarize myself with every single card, comparing it to the original. So, I mean, okay, obviously this is the Pope. And you could guesstimate that this is probably the Lover card. But, not all the cards are easy to discern, and if you put it aside and you don't use it for 2 or 3 weeks, you may forget. At least I did. So I decided that this deck was not a good deck for me to use because even once I made the improvements I thought I would like, it made it harder to use. But isn't that an improvement? I mean, this image here looks so much larger than this, right? I mean, doesn't it? Here, I'm putting him at the same distance from the camera. Isn't this one so much easier to see? It looks larger. You can see the detail much better. And they're the same distance from the camera. So by altering this deck, I do think I improved it dramatically. However, at the same time, it made it a little more difficult to use. And as we progress, you'll see that some of the cards, the arrangement of the suits, it becomes a little bit on the complicated side. And Fortitude is 11 and Justice was 8, so I do appreciate that very much. I mean, it's just, it's just so much prettier. It's just so much nicer. If you want to know how a border, affects an image, this is a really good example of it. I think I did another video on this, but it's probably buried under about 250 videos. So even if I did do another video on it, it's not bad to do again. It's really unfortunate that I can't use it because it's such a beautiful deck. So, okay, the higher order cards or the Triumph cards, I can tell what they are. Now, funnily, when I was trying to organize them, put them in order without referencing the mother deck, I was putting this as the Pope, right, initially. And as it turns out, it's the Devil. And it's so funny because in so many decks, the Devil and the Pope kind of have a similarity between them. So I kind of got the sense of a holy man from this card. But as it turns out, it's the unholy man. And sometimes they're not so, I guess, well, it's a conversation for another day. Now, see this tower? This tower looks so big, much big. It's just, it's a gorgeous deck. I love the art in this deck. It's just unfortunate that I think the pips became very confusing for me. And some of the higher order cards just became kind of confusing. Now here we have the moon card. And, you know, this crustacean saves the day. You can tell, plus the moon, you know, and the towers. But, you know, for me, a deck is not successful if I can't immediately grasp the concept. If the concept is not evident, then it's not a deck that I'm going to use. You know, the concept has to be evident in the cards, and this obviously is. It's beautiful, beautiful. Judgment. Yep. And of course, Lo Scarabeo, you know, has all the languages on the bottom. Okay, now we're getting into the pips. Now, the swords is associated with water. So there's that. You know, I presume you could override that if you don't see swords as water. But if you use it, then you have to recall, you know, you want to read the deck, right? So when you use this and you get a lot of swords, you'll have to try to remember, if you want to read the deck, that water equates with the suit of swords. But there's such a rich, oh, it's so beautiful. Why? Such a beautiful, beautiful deck. And with the fives, it's easy because the fives all seem, you know, all suits have a pentagram present someplace, and so this is actually is made of the swords itself. But it becomes less easy, you know, you have to count them, you know, and it becomes a little less easy to, you know, see, wow, this is interesting. We have a crustacean in the 6th of swords. Yeah, and, you know, I started not being able to, like, discern what's a sword, you know, and how many. Okay, we have the box and we have the 3, so I guess that's a 7. But it's not, you know, it's not readily clear to me, and I think I lost interest in using it once I no longer could readily see the numbers. So I wish there was a way that the deck could be a little easier. I could go in and just put a number discreetly, you know, in a corner or something, but I don't think I would do such a nice job. And it might just be a matter of getting used to it and just realizing, you know, what you know, just like anything, just what it looks like and being able to readily identify it. I'd have to go through the deck side by side with the mother deck many times in order to confidently recognize every card that I'm looking at. I mean, obviously we have the tip that it's a knight. Now you see here, the top of the card continues after this break. So we have a continuation of the helmet right there. So it's kind of unfortunate, you know. And then it counts for the space that's negated when the space is there. So it's kind of unfortunate. It really is. But I guess nobody's complained, or the author or the creator of the deck makes no apologies, and this is the way she did it, and this is the way she wants it to be, and that's her prerogative. Now, as a deck owner, you know, you can change it if you want to. I really ought to make an effort to use this deck. I really should, because it's so pretty. And, you know, everything's right about it. I mean, they call them deniers or coins, right? Oh, they call them pentacles too, and denier, denari. So it has the historic name, and it also has the more modern name, but it's presented as coin and not pentacles, which I appreciate. And you get a sense of growth, right? 3 for growth. You know, you have two underneath the land, buried, and then one that's flourishing. So you get I think it beautifully portrays what it's supposed to. And even if it's abstract, if you know the Marseille system, you know 4 coins and what it means. So you don't really have to have a picture. But when the ones that do have, okay, now we have pentacles here. But on the ones that do have illustration, it kind of goes with the flow of what you're looking at. Now here we have a 5. So we don't have a pentagram on the card itself, in the configuration of the pips, but we see it in the card and on the coin. That we don't see it on the 4, so we see it on the 5. Okay, so that's why the pentagram appears here. And it's gone for the 6th. Okay, so every card of every 5 of every suit has the appearance of a pentagram. So if you're seeing a pentagram, you're looking at a 5. So that's helpful. Ah, 10. Okay, 10 has pentagrams. Well, it's double 5. Oh, this is 8. Well, there goes that theory, folks. I mean, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And I like the images a whole lot better now that I bordered it, Now you see how the head is chopped off, but that's the way it is. That's the way it is, I like it so much better. But it's just too challenging for me to readily identify every card, and it's important to be able to readily identify every card because, you want to be able to have your reading flow and you want to be able to be clear on what you're looking at. And even if I know I can identify 75 out of 78 cards, just being uncertain of the few, will make me less confident when I do my reading. And confidence is a key feature of pulling off a tarot reading, right? You have to be confident in what you see and what you say. Isn't that gorgeous? It reminds me of the Piedmontese tarot decks, the Vernano, I think it was, that had a beautiful goblet full of flowers and a butterfly. I think it was the first time am I confused? I could be confusing. Well, I could be saying something wrong, so excuse me, but that's what it's reminding me of. What a rich deck. Oh. So, I don't know. Have any of you ever done an operation on any of your decks? I mean, I took this operation very seriously. I made sure I had all the right equipment. I wasn't, fancy, carefree and fancy free doing this. I mean, I made sure I researched it. I made sure I had the right tools I bought just for this process. I never used them since. And I wanted to make sure I didn't make any mistakes because I really think of my cards as very special. And I didn't make a single error. There's not a single mistake. And I'm really happy with the job I did. But I'm not sure that it made the deck any more easily usable for me. I mean, it's like, I know there's a lot of cups, but I have to stop and count and make sure they're not 8 or 10. I have to... I'd have to pause and say, how many cups are those? Whereas I don't typically do that with other decks because I can readily count them. I can readily see the pattern in the way they're distributed. Well, I'd be interested to know if you've ever altered any of your decks. And if any of you have this deck and you have put it aside because it's too hard to use and you like what I've done, you may consider doing what I did. And you'll have the benefit of seeing how someone else did it and it turned out okay. As long as you can comfortably identify what you're looking at, you may not have the issues that I have. Again, we see the pentagram for 5. Oh, okay, I understand the pentagram for a 9 because you have the 5 and then you have the 4. Okay, I get it. So that's why the pentagram might appear on all the 9s because it's a group of 5 and 4. So that actually is helpful in identifying what the card is. Now, I didn't comment on it when I went through the cups, which I would normally associate with water. And I mentioned that the swords are identified as water, but let's see what the cups are. I guess air. I guess that's what it would be because I saw the butterfly in the ace, and that would suggest to me air because it's a winged creature. So I think there's a butterfly, not necessarily in every card, but there looks like to be a butterfly there, a winged creature there, lots of butterflies here. So yeah, so the swords and cups have different elemental designations in this deck. Anyway, if you have this deck and you thought of modifying it and you were on the, not sure about whether or not to do it, maybe this video will be inspiration to do it. Just make sure you have the proper tools for the job. When you go, I've been on this planet enough to know that if you're going to do something, you got to do it right. And, if you're going to alter a deck, make sure you have the proper tools. Don't be impatient and just do it with your rusty X-Acto blade and a ruler and think you're going to get the right results, right? You're going to have to just make sure that you do, you have the right tools for the job. Be patient. This took days. I didn't do this I didn't do this in a day. It took me probably a week, and I'm glad I did it. It was a good experience for me. I'll probably never do it again because it's a little on the nerve-wracking side, but it was less nerve-wracking because I retained the original, so I wasn't destroying the original deck. But still, it was a little on the nerve-wracking side, and I just thought I'd show this deck. It was my one and only time that I've ever done such a thing. Okay, until next time, friends, peace and stay well.